I've talked about seed oils killing your testosterone. I've talked about sleep killing it too. There's one hormone behind both stories. In the sleep video, I told you cortisol rises to cover a deficit, that it's compensation, not balance. I didn't tell you that's happening even on the nights you sleep fine.
1936. A young endocrinologist in Montreal notices something consistent in his rats. Stress leaves a measurable mark on the body. Not a feeling, a physical change.
He calls it the general adaptation syndrome. Alarm, resistance, exhaustion. The medical world files it under interesting. Nobody calls it a health threat yet.
13 years later, Mayo Clinic researchers inject a compound isolated from the adrenal cortex into a patient with crippling rheumatoid arthritis. The result is so dramatic the press calls it a miracle drug. It wins a Nobel Prize in 1950. It took 15 years to go from "this hormone ages you" to "this hormone is a miracle drug," because both were true. Cortisol isn't good or bad. It's a dose and duration hormone. The same molecule that gets you out of bed
is the one quietly taxing every other system, depending on whether it spikes and clears or stays. The dose is the difference. Here's what that means for you, today, with nothing injected. After 30, mitochondrial functions starts declining. The cells that produce your energy become less efficient. But this isn't inevitable.
1926. Harvard physiologists are certain. The body is a self-correcting machine. Stress the system and it returns to perfect balance, every time, without cost.
Processed food, alcohol a few nights a week, blue light until midnight, no morning sunlight, chronic stress. Each one accelerates the decline. Testosterone drops about 1% a year after 30. A bad lifestyle turns that into 3 to 4. The difference between lines isn't age, it's information your body is responding to. You're not tired because you're getting older. You're tired because no one taught you how to maintain the machine. I've shown you this graph before. Cortisol is supposed to spike in the morning and clear by evening. Here's what it looks like when it doesn't. The stressor is rarely dramatic. Late emails, financial pressure, traffic. Cortisol doesn't distinguish severity. It doesn't know the difference between a late report and a predator.
1958. Researchers conclude that control is the antidote to stress damage. The high-performing man, the decision-maker, is protected. The data says so.
Chronic cortisol accelerates telomere degradation. Telomeres are the protective caps on your DNA. Shorter telomeres means faster cellular aging. And this is now measurable in blood. It's not a theory, it's a number a lab can run.
1973. The scientific consensus. How fast your cells age is fixed at birth. Behavior doesn't change the clock. Stress is not a variable.
Most high-performing men are running 3 or 4 cortisol drivers simultaneously. They don't feel it as stress, they feel it as drive. The bill comes later.
1884. A New York neurologist names the condition of chronic exhaustion in high-achieving men. His diagnosis? Depleted nervous energy.
His prescription? Rest, cold air, and stronger moral discipline.
Here's the thing, nobody connects to what I just showed you. Training harder when cortisol is already running high makes it worse. Not better, worse.
1952. Cortisone wins the Nobel Prize. The assumption follows immediately. If some is therapeutic, more is better. Nobody questions it yet.
Cardio sessions over 45 minutes at moderate to high intensity significantly elevate cortisol. For a man already running high cortisol from his life, that stacks on a compromised system. High-volume endurance training is associated with reduced testosterone in men. The research is consistent. Long cardio and hormonal optimization are often in direct conflict. The fix isn't no cardio. It's the right tool for your current biology. Resistance training for the hormonal stimulus. Walking for Zone 2 cardiovascular health and cortisol clearance. Without the hormonal cost. This isn't anti-cardio. It's about reading where your system currently is before choosing the tool. Most men are applying tools without reading the system first.
1966. Exercise physiologists confirm cortisol returns to baseline within the hour. Movement clears the slate. Every session starts fresh.
Cortisol management is the single most important lever for men over 30. Not because cortisol is bad, because modern life pushes it chronically high. And the cost is testosterone, sleep, immunity, and clear thinking. All at once. The main drivers: disrupted sleep, skipping meals when stressed, and high-intensity exercise without recovery. Constant information stimulation, and unresolved psychological stress. Most high-performing men are running 3 or 4 of these simultaneously and calling it discipline. Morning. Let cortisol peak naturally. Your body has a cortisol awakening response, a designed spike that pulls you out of sleep and sets alertness for the day. The mistake is stacking caffeine and stress on top of that spike before it's passed. Email waits. Opening it before the peak passes fires another spike on top of one already running. Borrowing from the system. Noon walk, 20 minutes. This isn't a wellness luxury, it's a cortisol clearance mechanism. Zone 2 movement at midday produces a measurable reduction in circulating cortisol. The morning spike has passed by now. The walk finishes the job. Early afternoon, one low stimulation window. No news, no social media, no high-stakes decisions. Cortisol wants to keep declining through the afternoon. Every time you stack a notification or a conflict on top of that decline, you interrupt the clearance cycle. Evening, darkness. Bright light after dark reads to the brain as an active environment. Active environments maintain cortisol. You can't eliminate cortisol. You can prevent it from staying high. That distinction drives most of the optimization I do. Light, inflammation, sleep. Every system I've built this channel on runs through the same control point. I didn't know that when I started. I know it now. More training isn't always more results. Not when cortisol's already running high. I'll show you exactly where that line is. Some of this is manageable with specific nutrients. I'm not going to name them yet. There's a short, evidence-backed list, and it's coming. Cortisol is one control knob on testosterone. It's not the only one. There are more I haven't shown you yet. Every optimization I've run sits on top of this one number: manage cortisol. Everything else responds. I spent years calling this personality. I'm a night owl. I'm just wired for stress. I run hot. Every one of those was a cortisol story I didn't have the language for yet. You have it now. The hormone that woke you up this morning is the same one that's been running interference on everything else. Now, you know where it is.